Thanks for having me, everyone. I'm glad to be here today to bring a different perspective about agility, taking Apple as the main subject here. Um, this is our lineup today. I'm going to do a quick intro, go through some big numbers, invite you to go inside Apple with me, speak about Agile, of course, and wrap with a epilogue. Just a quick disclaimer. Everything that I share in this talk is public domain and is one Google away from you. Hi, I'm Lucas Estevam. Nice to meet you all. I'm a technical manager and principal UI engineer here at Avenue Code, where I work for over a decade now. I'm also a podcast host, Códigos de Carreira. It's a Brazilian Portuguese podcast. So if you're curious about it and understand Portuguese, check it out on the major streaming platforms. I'm originally from Belo Horizonte, Brazil, but I moved to California about 4.5 years ago. Now that you know me, I want to go through some big numbers from Apple. Apple currently has around 164,000 employees. It's one of the few companies to reach the market value of $3 trillion, which is very impressive. It also has 2 billion active devices, 1 billion paid subscription, an all-time revenue record in services driven, and that includes video, Apple Care, cloud, payment, everything. It recently, there was in the news that Apple achieved 10 billion in savings accounts here in the US. And through this year until Q3, Apple accumulated over 300 billion in products and services revenue, which represents around 40% of margin or 24% of profit. Huge numbers there. Apple is a company that is so predictable and so well seen that it made 50% of the portfolio from one of the biggest holdings in the world. Warren Buffett trusts Apple with his life. This is Apple Q3 income statement. Don't worry about all the numbers. I just want to highlight a few things. iPhone still represents almost 50% of the revenue, still like the main product from the company. And another curious thing, it's about services over there. Services have a bigger gross margin when in comparison with the products. So incredible 71%. And that happens since cost for operation for services and the scalability is way easier for services. To put it in perspective, especially talking about Apple services, if we could put together Netflix, MasterCard, Spotify, Activision Blizzard, Peloton, and we could even include Dropbox there, and some all the revenue from all these companies, they wouldn't reach the revenue value from Apple services alone. So it's huge. I showed all those numbers to say that what is obvious, right? Apple is extremely successful. There is no question about the success that Apple achieved. The numbers speak for themselves. So the question that I want to try to answer here today is Apple agile? To answer this question, we need to deep dive in the company. So I want to invite you guys to come inside Apple with me and at least try to uncover some of the secrets around this unique organization. So come with me inside Apple. And I want to start talking about how Apple is organized for innovation. And this is very interesting because everything that surrounds Apple culture and the way it succeeds is around that. So in 1997, when Steve Jobs returned to Apple, the company had this conventional structure. So a few business units, each business unit has its own profit and loss responsibility. Everything changed on his first year since he returned. He changed everything, restructured the whole company. He even fired lots of general managers. And he changed everything so the company would focus on functional expertise. So instead of having few business units, and each business unit, as I said, with its own profit and loss responsibility, the company became from a conventional structure to a functional expertise focused one, and with multiple business units under a single P&L. Apple's main purpose is to create products that enrich people's daily lives. That's their goal. Create products that are going to impact people's lives. And to accomplish that, Steve believed that those with the most expertise and those with the most experience should also have the decision rights for that particular domain. And this idea of the connection between expertise and experience and the ability to decide in a particular domain was based on two views. First, Apple competes in a market where the rates of technological changes and the disruption are super high. You must agree with me in that topic. So it must rely on the judgment and sometimes even on the intuition of people with deep technical knowledge. That's the first point. The second is Apple couldn't commit to offer the best products and be concerned with short-term profit at the same time. It couldn't work like that. Each business units make the best decisions without external influence. But let's understand a little bit more about those two views. We all know Apple makes bets about which technologies or which designs are more likely to succeed long before it can get market feedback. An example of it, it's the Vision Pro. Um, the main VP of software engineering, Craig Federick, he mentioned that this project took around 8 years just to be developed. It's a long time and all in full secrecy. Yet, Apple was capable of delivering technology disruption. Apple needed a structure that allowed this technology disruption, giving the engineers freedom to disrupt, to try, to make mistakes without financial concerns. On the other hand, if you think about quality versus profit, just think about it. The finance team is not involved with engineering meetings. The same way, the engineering teams are not involved with pricing decisions. Those decisions are made independently without affecting one or the other because they're made from experts. Even the bonuses of senior leadership are based on company-wide performance rather than associate that with the costs of or the revenue of particular products. Thus, product decisions are insulated from financial pressures. It gives the engineers freedom, as I said, to disrupt and enables Apple to disrupt with quality while it keeps it in secret. On top of that, to make it work, Apple also expects leaders to possess three key leadership characteristics. And those three are deep expertise, immersion in the details, and the willingness to collaboratively debate. For the sake of time, I'm going to talk about deep expertise only today. Apple is a company where, as we've been talking about it, experts lead experts. And the assumption for this principle is that it's easier to train an expert to be a manager that manages well that particular domain than to train a manager to be an expert in something that can be very complex. At Apple, hardware experts will lead hardware, and software experts will lead software, and so on. This approach, and that's very interesting, cascades down to all levels of the organization, creating a high performance culture that it's based on talent density. And let's talk about it. High performance culture, beautiful words, but how so? What does Apple means by high performance? And I always like to tackle this subject speaking about what is not high performance. So we are definitely not talking about extra hours or messages on the weekends or extreme on-call hours or having multiple levels of approval for something simple like a PTO. High performance doesn't mean micromanagement, doesn't mean perfect requirements. It actually can mean a lot of ambiguity. It also doesn't mean applying your favorite agile framework or methodology. Hanging there, I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. Let's define high performance. Pretty simple. It's the ability to operate in high standard at a high speed. It's also used to describe something that is faster or more powerful than something else. There's always the need of a comparison when we are talking about high performance. And bringing that concept to teams, I'd like to present the Tuckman model. So this guy, Bruce Wayne Tuckman, he came up with this model to explain those common stages that everything it's gonna go through until it reaches high performing. And the first phase is forming. The team doesn't have clarity of purpose. People don't know exactly what they're doing there. They're pretty much trying to find themselves in a place. The team is going to go through storming when conflict arises. People start to establish their place in the team, and things are not very nice at this moment. Then the team starts to normalize. There is already a level of consensus, and there's already some sort of agreements on that team, more clarity about the roles until the team finally reaches the peak of high performance. And at that stage, the team has a clear strategy. The team has a shared vision, and it's able and capable of operating autonomously, delivering great results with synergy, which is a very important detail. Again, that's the foundation of high performance at Apple. A team that is capable to perform with a shared vision, a clear strategy, operating autonomously, delivering great results with synergy. And what it takes to be high performing, we pretty much talk about it, right? But what is the big piece? And I'll anticipate something. It's not a framework and it's not a methodology. What is the big piece for high performing? Well, it's people. Steve Jobs himself said that you are well advised to go after the cream of the cream. A small team of A plus players can run circles around a giant team of B and C players. What is high performance again? We can translate Apple's high performance culture into lean teams and high talent density. But those again, beautiful words. How does Apple accomplish that? Well, Apple is always trying to bring the best people. Apple strives to bring the best people to their team, to its teams. It gives teams clarity of purpose before they are even formed. The company empowers experts to say no. Jobs used to say that focus is not about saying yes to that one particular thing that you need to focus on, but rather focus means saying no to all the other things that are not related to that goal. It means that the engineer, the guy, the person, the woman with the expertise, that one person that is going to execute, they have the power to say no. They're the ones who are actually capable to say and to have a word on technical viability or the feasibility of a scope and the time to deliver software. Alignment of expectations. Technical teams work side by side with cross-functional teams, and those teams may be composed by project managers or designers or teams working with different technologies, and they work as equals because each of those teams are led and they're formed by experts. So you're talking about experts talking to experts. Keeping teams small. And this is very interesting because Apple frequently assigns major projects to small groups. For example, just two engineers wrote the code that was responsible for converting Apple's Safari browser for the iPad. And that was a massive undertaking. And Speaking about Safari, but before iPad was a thing, when it was actually being designed by Apple, it connects with all the principles that we've been talking about so far. There is a guy, his name is Kim Consiera. He wrote this book called Creative Selection, which is my companion here today. And he speaks about how this 18 months project happened. And they had a single and a simple rule: it must be the fastest browser. And that requirement came straight from Steve Jobs. There was one simple rule: this browser must be the fastest one that was ever built. How did they accomplish that? With a small team of experts that had clarity of purpose. Many features could have been added to Safari. They had expertise to do so, but they also had the power to say no to them all and to keep that single, simple rule in mind that was going to make the biggest difference in the end of the day. They had the power to say no, to be able to deliver something that was disruptive. But what it all has to do with Agile anyway. And if you couldn't connect the dots by now, I want to provoke you to reassess your understanding about Agile and maybe to be open to a different perspective, one that is not, or one that does not rely on a specific framework, one that does not rely or is strictly related to a particular framework or a methodology. And let's go back then to the Agile Manifesto. We always go back to the manifesto, right? From all the resources that were used to build this presentation, all the books that were written from people that work at inside Apple, trying to explain how Apple worked and how Apple achieved its success. None of those resources mentioned a single framework or methodology. And that's very interesting because the Agile Manifesto is not about a particular process. It's not about a unique or a set of specific frameworks that you can pick. So, is Apple agile? Is Apple really agile? And to answer that question, let me go back again and say that the Agile Manifesto is not about a particular process, but rather it's about a set of values that was built on a respect for competence and that brings out the best of people. Remember, the key of success is around people, not a process. People should always be over processes, over frameworks, over methodologies. And in this sense, reflecting about that, I can say that Apple is truly agile. With that in mind, and in time for us to wrap up, I want to invite you also to look at Agile with no attachments. Again, to no attachments to frameworks, no attachments to methodologies, but instead connect Agile values to your team's needs, connect Agile values to your organization needs, and maybe you can create your own system. You can create your own framework that is suited for your organization, for your team, something customized. I hope you enjoyed and found this at least a little bit useful. And thank you.